First contact. Captain Victoria Morno had spent 14 years exploring the depths of space, but nothing could have prepared her for what would unfold on that seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning. The USS Meridian maintained its standard patrol route through Sector 27B, a relatively quiet region of space where the most exciting event in weeks had been a meteor shower passing through an abandoned mining outpost. "Status report," Morno called out as she entered the bridge, coffee in hand. The bridge crew barely glanced up from their stations, accustomed to the routine of their deep space assignment. Lieutenant James Chen, her sensor officer, was the first to break the monotony. "Captain, I'm picking up something unusual." The slight tremor in his usually steady voice caught her attention immediately. Chen was not one to exaggerate or sound alarmed without cause. Morno set her coffee down and moved to his station. "Define unusual, Lieutenant." "Energy readings from Sector 337. They don't match any known signature in our database." Chen's fingers danced across his console, adjusting parameters and running diagnostic checks. "It's not natural, too structured for cosmic phenomena, but it's not any ship configuration I've ever seen." Dr. Marcus Patel, the ship's chief scientist, abandoned his own station to join them. His salt and pepper beard twitched with excitement as he studied the readings over Chen's shoulder. "Fascinating. The output patterns suggest controlled generation, but the frequency modulations are entirely alien to our technology." Morno felt a familiar tingle at the base of her skull, the one that always preceded significant discoveries. "Distance. 2.8 million kilometers in closing," Chen reported. "It's on an intercept course, Captain. Whatever it is, it's coming directly toward us." "Red alert," Morno ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her system. "Shields up, weapon systems on standby, but do not target. Let's see what we're dealing with first." The bridge lights dimmed as the ship powered up its defensive systems. On the main view screen, the starfield appeared unchanged until Chen zoomed in on the coordinates. At first, there was nothing but darkness. Then, like a shadow detaching from the void itself, something emerged. "My God," Lieutenant Commander Elena Rodriguez, the first officer, whispered. The vessel, if it could be called that, was unlike anything Morno had ever encountered. It seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, its surface appearing not as solid matter but as an absence, a tear in the fabric of space itself. The ship moved with impossible grace, its elongated form twisting through spacetime as if the laws of physics were mere suggestions. "Dr. Patel analysis," Morno demanded, unable to tear her eyes from the screen. Patel was already running calculations, his excitement barely contained. "It's approximately twice our size, but the mass readings are inconsistent. One moment it registers as more massive than a neutron star, the next it's lighter than a feather. The hull, if that's what it is, absorbs 99.99% of all directed energy. We're only seeing it because of gravitational lensing effects." Captain, Communications Officer Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka spoke up. "Should I attempt first contact protocols?" Morno nodded. "Open all frequencies. Standard first contact package followed by basic mathematical sequences." As Tanaka began broadcasting, the dark ship continued its approach. Minutes stretched into an eternity of silence, broken only by the soft beeping of consoles and the hum of the Meridian systems. "No response on any frequency," Tanaka reported after several minutes. Suddenly, the ship's lights flickered. Every console on the bridge dimmed simultaneously before returning to normal with a soft chime. "What just happened?" Morno demanded. Chen's eyes widened at his readings. "Some kind of scan, Captain. It passed right through our shields, analyzed every system, every circuit, everything, right down to our DNA structure." Before anyone could respond, a sound filled the bridge, not through the speakers, but as if it manifested directly in their minds. It was a harmonic resonance, multiple tones layered upon each other in a way that defied conventional audio equipment. The ship's AI, Artemis, immediately began processing. Attempting translation, it announced in its familiar, calm voice. Linguistic pattern recognition initiated. The tones shifted, morphed, and finally resolved into words. Curious, small, new, why seek the void where others fear to tread? Morno stepped forward. "This is Captain Victoria Morno of the Earth vessel USS Meridian. We are explorers from the Sol system. We come in peace." Another pause, then peace, yes, fear, no, unlike the others who came before, follow, understand, decide. Without warning, the dark ship accelerated away from them at a speed that made their sensors struggle to maintain tracking. It's heading toward the Deep Field Nebula, Chen reported. At its current velocity, it will reach the edge in, this can't be right, 12 minutes. Morno's mind raced. First contact protocols urged caution, but this opportunity was unprecedented. Whatever this entity was, it possessed technology far beyond human understanding and had just invited them to follow. Plot pursuit course, she ordered. Maximum sustainable speed, let's see where they're leading us. As the Meridian's engines powered up to full capacity, Morno couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. The dark ship had mentioned others who came before, others who had feared. What had they feared? And why did this entity consider humanity different? The chase led them to a region of space where the stars seemed to dance differently, where the laws of physics appeared to bend and warp. Ahead, the dark ship approached what looked like a tear in reality itself, a shimmering distortion that rippled with colors beyond the visible spectrum. Captain, Patel called out, his voice filled with awe and concern. Spatial readings indicate a dimensional barrier. The fabric of space-time is folding. It's not a wormhole, Chen added. It's more like a door to somewhere else entirely. The dark ship passed through the distortion without slowing, causing the anomaly to expand briefly before beginning to contract. The portal is destabilizing, Rodriguez warned. We have 30 seconds before it closes completely. Morno didn't hesitate. Take us through. Captain, Chen protested. We don't know what's on the other side. We're explorers, Lieutenant. This is what we do. All hands brace for transition. The Meridian surged forward, its hull groaning under the strain as they approached the dimensional boundary. As they passed through, reality itself seemed to turn inside out. Every crew member experienced the sensation of being simultaneously torn apart and compressed, as if existence itself was examining them at the quantum level. When the lights returned and the disorientation faded, the bridge crew found themselves in a realm that defied description. Instead of the familiar black void of space, they were surrounded by curtains of luminescent energy in colors that had no names. Vast structures of impossible geometry floated in the distance, their forms shifting and flowing like living mathematical equations. And there, waiting for them, was the dark ship. Welcome, the voice resonated in their minds clearer now. To the space between spaces, the archive of all that was, all that is, and all that might be. You who seek without destroying, who explore without conquering, you may yet break the cycle, or perhaps you will become its newest iteration. Time will tell. As the Meridian drifted into this impossible realm, Captain Victoria Morno realized they had stumbled upon something far greater than a simple first contact. They had discovered a repository of cosmic memory, watched over by entities that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. The question now was not just what they would learn, but what they would become with that knowledge. The fate of humanity might well depend on what happened next in this space beyond understanding. Beyond the veils. The USS Meridian drifted through the impossible space, its crew struggling to comprehend the reality that surrounded them. Captain Victoria Morno stood at the center of the bridge, her gaze fixed on the dark vessel that had led them to this realm beyond conventional physics. Dr. Patel, she asked quietly, what are we looking at? The scientist shook his head in wonder, his usual analytical composure shaken. Captain, our instruments, they're not designed for this. We're reading energy patterns that shouldn't exist, matter that behaves like information, time flowing in nonlinear streams. It's as if we've entered a space where the fundamental rules of our universe are merely suggestions. Lieutenant James Chen interrupted, his voice tinged with urgency. Captain, the dark ship is moving again. It's approaching that structure. On the view screen, the alien vessel glided toward what appeared to be an enormous construct of light and energy. As they drew closer, Morno realized the structure was in constant flux, its form shifting between geometric patterns that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human perception could process. This, the alien voice resonated in their minds, is the archive. Memory of all that was, preservation of all that has been lost, chronicle of patterns that repeat across the cosmos. Who are you? Morno asked, directing her question to the void. We are the Sentinels, came the response. Created by those who came first, those who saw the cycle beginning. We observe, we remember, we intervene when necessary. The dark ship passed through what seemed to be an opening in the archive. though the concept of opening felt inadequate for the pulsing gateway of energy that both welcomed and warned. The meridian followed, and suddenly they were inside a space that defied all logical constraints. A chamber that appeared infinite yet contained, holding countless floating objects that glowed with inner radiance. Each vessel holds the essence of a civilization, the Sentinels explained. Their knowledge, their achievements, their failures, most are gone now, victims of time, war, or their own hubris. Lieutenant Commander Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. "How many civilizations have you recorded?" "Millions," came the simple reply. "Across galaxies, across dimensions, across time itself." One of the glowing objects, a crystalline sphere containing swirling patterns of light, floated toward the meridian. As it approached, holographic images formed in the air around it, scenes of a civilization rising from primitive beginnings to technological mastery, only to destroy itself in a war over resources that their own advancement had made obsolete. The Kryn, the Sentinels narrated, masters of quantum manipulation, they could reshape matter at will yet could not reshape their own nature. Greed consumed them as it has consumed so many. Another object approached, a complex geometric form that seemed to exist partially in their dimension and partially elsewhere. It projected images of beings made of pure energy, their civilization spanning multiple star systems connected by bridges of light. The Luminari, they transcended physical form, became beings of pure thought, yet they grew disconnected from the reality that birthed them, withdrawing into contemplation until they simply ceased to interact with the universe. They exist still, somewhere beyond our reach, lost in endless meditation. Object after object told stories of civilizations that had risen and fallen, each following patterns that seemed disturbingly familiar to the human crew. Some had destroyed themselves through war, others through environmental collapse, still others through technologies they couldn't control. "Why show us this?" Morno asked, a growing unease settling in her stomach. "What's the purpose of this archive if these civilizations are gone?" "To break the cycle," the Sentinels responded. "To find those who might learn from the failures of others, to preserve what would otherwise be lost to entropy." Dr. Patel had been studying the patterns, his mind racing to comprehend the implications. "You're looking for a species that can avoid these pitfalls, but why us? Why humans?" "You possess qualities we have rarely observed," the Sentinels explained. "Curiosity without immediate conquest, the ability to learn from your mistakes, a balance between individual ambition and collective cooperation, yet you also carry the seeds of your own destruction, the same patterns that have doomed countless others." A new object approached, smaller than the others, a perfect blue sphere that Morno recognized with a shock as Earth. "Your world stands at a crossroads," the Sentinels continued. "Your technology advances rapidly, yet your wisdom lags behind. You reach for the stars while your planet suffers. You dream of unity while practicing division." Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "What happens to civilizations that break the cycle? Surely some must have succeeded." "A few," the Sentinels acknowledged. "They become something new, something we cannot predict or control. They transcend the patterns that bind most species to their fate." The dark ship began to pulse with energy, and the space around them shifted. The archive seemed to respond, its impossible architecture reconfiguring itself. "We offer you a choice," the Sentinels declared. "Return to your world with the knowledge that you are not alone, that your actions have consequences beyond your understanding. Or remain here, learn from the archive, but know that you can never return to your former existence." Morno felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. To stay would mean abandoning Earth, their mission, their very humanity as they knew it. To leave would mean returning with knowledge that could either save their species or drive it mad with the implications. "What became of the others who chose to stay?" Rodriguez asked. "Some became sentinels themselves, guardians of knowledge across the cosmos. Others transcended to forms of existence we cannot comprehend. A few were overwhelmed by the truth and ceased to function." Morno looked at her crew, seeing the same conflict in their eyes that she felt in her heart. They had sought the unknown, and now the unknown offered them a choice that would define not just their lives, but potentially the future of humanity. "If we return," she asked carefully, "what happens to this knowledge, to our memory of this place?" "You will remember," the Sentinels assured her. "But the specifics will fade like a dream upon waking. You will carry the essence of what you have learned, the warning and the hope, but not the technical details that your species is not yet ready to possess. Chen spoke up, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Captain, I believe we have a responsibility to return, to warn Earth, to help guide our species away from the patterns we've seen here. Patel nodded in agreement. The knowledge that we're not alone, that others have faced these challenges, it could make all the difference. Morno made her decision. We choose to return. Our place is with our people, helping them navigate the challenges ahead. So be it, the Sentinels responded. You have chosen wisely. Remember this, the cycle can be broken, but only through conscious choice and collective wisdom. Your species stands at the threshold. What you do next will determine whether you join the archive as a memory or transcend it as something new. The dark ship began to lead them back toward the dimensional rift. As they approached, the Sentinels offered one final message. We will be watching, and if your species proves worthy, perhaps we will meet again under different circumstances. The transition back through the rift was less disorienting this time, as if they were being gently guided rather than forcibly pulled. When they emerged back into normal space, the dark ship was already fading from view, becoming one with the cosmic background. Captain, Chen reported, checking his instruments. We've been gone for exactly 2.7 seconds according to our chronometers. But we experienced hours in there, Rodriguez protested. Time, Patel mused, apparently flows differently in that realm. As the Meridian resumed its patrol route, Morno began composing her report to Earth Command. She knew that much of what they had experienced would sound like fantasy, and indeed, the specific details were already becoming hazy in her mind. But the core message remained clear. Humanity was not alone, and their choices in the coming years would determine their place in the cosmic order. In the weeks that followed, subtle changes began to manifest on Earth. Scientists reported breakthrough insights that seemed to come from nowhere. Political leaders found themselves drawn to cooperation over conflict. Environmental initiatives gained unexpected momentum. The crew of the Meridian never spoke publicly about their full experience, but they worked tirelessly behind the scenes, guiding humanity away from the destructive patterns they had witnessed in the archive. They established a secret monitoring station near the coordinates where they had encountered the dark ship, watching for signs of its return. The threshold. 3 years had passed since the USS Meridian's encounter with the Sentinels. Captain Victoria Morno, now stationed at the clandestine Threshold Observatory built near the coordinates of their dimensional crossing, watched the monitors that endlessly scanned the cosmic void. The station, hidden within an asteroid field and funded through black budget channels, served as humanity's early warning system for any return of the dark ship. But the warning she received that morning didn't come from space. It came from Earth. Captain, we're receiving an encrypted transmission from Geneva, Lieutenant Chen announced, his face drawn with concern. It's from Dr. Patel, Priority Alpha. Morno felt her pulse quicken. Patel had been working with the United Nations Scientific Advisory Council, subtly steering global policy based on their experiences in the archive. Priority Alpha meant something had gone terribly wrong. Put it through to my ready rooms. Patel's face appeared on her screen, aged beyond the 3 years that had passed. Victoria, we're out of time. The patterns are accelerating. The Syrian conflict has gone nuclear. China and the United States are mobilizing. The climate treaties have collapsed. Everything we've been trying to prevent, it's all happening at once. Morno gripped her desk. How long do we have? Days, maybe hours before the point of no return. The simulations show a 97% probability of total civilizational collapse within 6 months if current trajectories continue. Patel's voice cracked. We're becoming another entry in the archive, Victoria, just like all the others. As if in response to humanity's crisis, Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain, we're detecting dimensional fluctuations at the crossing point. Something's coming through. Morno raced to the observation deck. Through the reinforced viewport, she saw the familiar distortion of reality, the telltale sign of the dimensional barrier thinning. But this time, it wasn't a single dark ship that emerged. Dozens of vessels materialized, each as impossibly black as the one they had encountered, but varying in size and configuration. They arranged themselves in a precise formation that reminded Morno uncomfortably of a judicial panel. We are receiving a transmission, Chen reported. It's different this time, more direct. The Sentinel's voice filled the station, but now it carried in weight of finality. The threshold has been reached. The pattern completes itself. Humanity chooses destruction. No, Morno stepped forward, addressing the fleet directly. Give us time, we can still change course. Time, the Sentinels responded, is what you have squandered. 3 cycles of your star since our warning, and you accelerate toward the very fate we showed you. But we're not all the same, Rodriguez argued from her station. Many of us are fighting to change things. As did members of every species before you, yet the pattern prevails. The few cannot alter the trajectory of the many when the many choose oblivion. Morno's mind raced. In the archive, they had seen countless civilizations fall to similar patterns: resource wars, environmental collapse, technological hubris. But they had also learned something else. You said some civilizations transcended the pattern, she reminded them. How? What did they do differently? A pause then, they chose unity over division at the moment of crisis. They placed the survival of their species above the interests of their factions. They evolved. An idea began to form in Morno's mind, desperate, unprecedented, but perhaps humanity's only chance. You have the power to preserve civilizations. You've done it before, storing their essence in the archive. But what if you could do more? What if you could give us a second chance? The silence that followed seemed to stretch across light years. Explain, the Sentinels finally responded. Don't just preserve our history after we're gone, Morno pressed. Intervene now, reset us. Give humanity the shock it needs to change course. You ask us to violate our primary directive, the Sentinels stated. We observe, we preserve, we do not interfere. But you already have interfered, Dr. Tanaka interjected from her console. You showed us the archive, you warned us, that was interference. Another pause, longer this time. When the Sentinels spoke again, their voice carried something almost like uncertainty. What you propose has never been attempted, to directly alter the course of a species during its critical phase. The consequences are unpredictable. The consequences of doing nothing are entirely predictable, Morno countered. Another dead civilization in your archive, another species that came close but failed. Is that really what you want, to watch us fail when you have the power to help us succeed? The dark ships began to move, rearranging themselves into a new configuration, a circle with one vessel at the center. Energy patterns that the crew had never seen before began to flow between them. If we do this, the Sentinels warned, humanity will be forever changed. The intervention will be remembered as both salvation and trauma. Your species will face challenges that may seem insurmountable. Better to face challenges than extinction, Morno replied firmly. Very well, prepare your world. The central vessel began to pulse with energy that transcended the visible spectrum. Spacetime itself seemed to ripple outward from its position. On Earth, every nuclear weapon simultaneously deactivated. Every military AI system went offline. Every satellite capable of weaponization powered down. But the Sentinels didn't stop there. Across the planet, every human being experienced a moment of shared consciousness, a fraction of a second where they felt the terror and hope of every other person on Earth. They saw in that instant what they were about to lose and what they could still save. When the moment passed, the world had changed. Soldiers on opposite sides of battle lines laid down their weapons. Political leaders halted their war preparations. Environmental activists found themselves joined by former opponents. The collective trauma of near extinction became a catalyst for unprecedented cooperation. Back at the Threshold Observatory, Morno watched as the Sentinel fleet began to withdraw. But the central vessel remained, approaching the station. You have been given a chance that no other species has received, the Sentinels communicated. Use it wisely. We will return in 100 of your years to evaluate the outcome of this experiment. Thank you, Morno whispered, knowing the word was inadequate. Do not thank us yet, Captain Victoria Morno. You have chosen a difficult path. Whether humanity rises to transcend its nature or falls to its baser instincts remains to be seen. But know this, you are no longer alone in the universe, and your actions now carry consequences beyond your world. As the last Sentinel ship faded into the dimensional rift, Morno turned to her crew. They had just witnessed and initiated the most significant moment in human history. The real work was only beginning. In the years that followed, humanity struggled with its new reality. The shared moment of consciousness had left an indelible mark on the collective psyche. Some called it enlightenment, others a violation. But none could deny that it had fundamentally altered the trajectory of human civilization. The United Earth Council was formed within months. Resources were redistributed, conflicts were resolved through dialogue rather than force, and environmental restoration became the planet's primary focus. It wasn't perfect. Human nature didn't change overnight, but the species now moved forward with the knowledge that they were part of something larger. Captain Victoria Morno lived to see the first human colonies on Mars and Europa, the development of clean fusion power, and the establishment of the Sentinel Academy, where future generations learned about the patterns that had doomed previous civilizations and how to avoid them. On her deathbed, surrounded by former crew members and generations of students, Morno reflected on the choice they had made at the threshold. They had asked for intervention, for a second chance, and they had received it. Now it was up to humanity to prove worthy of that gift. As she took her final breath, she thought she saw a familiar darkness at the edge of her vision, not threatening but watching. Always watching. The Sentinels would return in 100 years to judge the outcome of their experiment. Morno died believing that when they did, they would find a humanity that had finally broken the cycle, a species that had chosen to evolve rather than destroy itself. The threshold had been crossed, and there was no turning back.